Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of 1 Minute Breakdowns. We've been on a little bit of a slide in the past 2-3 weeks, but that's the name of the game. You're not going to be always you're not going to be winning every week, and it's just a matter of time until we bounce back. And I think this might be the week, although we do have some very questionable matchups. I'm looking forward to this weekend just for the sole fact that it's more fights and. We watch the UFC for our entertainment first and for the betting second. At least that's how it is for me. I do really appreciate the support that you guys have been showing on a weekly basis. So thank you so much for that. If you guys haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. And throughout the video, comment your predictions for the fight. I want to see what you guys have in terms of each of these matchups and just share thoughts. The more we work together, the better we can break these bookies. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this first matchup. And we have Ashley Evans Smith versus Eileen Perez. Ashley Evans Smith has been on a long layoff, a very long layoff. It's been 2 years and 6 months to be specific. Going up against Eileen Perez, she's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage. Ashley Evans Smith, she's going to be at a 1.5-inch reach advantage as well. 3 inches of height, and will be the older fighter by 8 years. In this fight, I think here's the thing: Perez, obviously the younger fighter, as I mentioned. Smith has been on a 2-year layoff, and I'm just questioning why she's coming back. 2 years and 6 months is a long time to be away from the sport, especially at her age. Is this her last fight on the contract? Is she just trying to come back and make some quick money? That's the thoughts that's going through my head. She is a decent wrestler in her own right and has some serviceable striking. Going up against Perez, who's also pretty decent on the mat herself. And I think she'll be the more aggressive fighter in this small cage. I expect her to get it done inside the distance personally. But I'm not willing to lay the big number on Perez currently at -200 to -210. I think that line has gone away from me. I would have much preferred it at that -130 to 140 price tag earlier in the week. But as it stands, I am going nowhere with this fight. I will not lay -200 on this. Next up, we have Carl Deaton going up against Alex Munoz. Carl Deaton is going to be at a 2-inch height disadvantage and then also at a 5-inch reach disadvantage. Both fighters are the same age. So Munoz is also another fighter coming off of a long layoff, and to be specific, 2 years and 2 months. So almost the same length as Ashley Evans Smith. And another reason why I'm staying away from this fight, it's you question the willpower. Like, why is Munoz coming back? Now, he isn't as old as Ashley Evans Smith, but there's still that question of why was he out for so long? I know he had that knee reconstruction, and he had those injuries that were lingering on throughout his career that he was trying to solve. But I don't know, man. He's a decent wrestler. Deaton himself, I mean, he faced a tough opponent in his debut against Selecki, and it was on short notice too. But here's the thing: I think Munoz is a really good wrestler in his own right, and the takedown defense of Deaton is not good. We saw in the last fight against Selecki, even though it was on short notice, the wrestling defense doesn't really change. It's a big step down in competition for Munoz, and I think he's going to be able to drown Deaton with the wrestling, come out on top, and win a unanimous decision here. So I have Munoz by unanimous decision in this matchup, but no bet. Next up, we have Tyson going up against Azad Maksum. Maksum is going to be making his debut in this fight. He'll be at a 2-inch reach advantage, and they're both fighters are the same height, with Azad Maksum being the younger fighter by 11 years. Now, we know who Tyson Nam is. He's a very low-volume striker. Doesn't really do much aside from the big power shot. In this fight, I think he has a puncher's chance, to be completely frank. I just think Maksum has him covered everywhere this fight goes. He's a decent finisher compared to the rest of the division, and can get it done both on the feet and on the mat. When Maksum's on his best game, he can get it done anywhere. You look at his record compared to the rest of the division, he's found more finishes than the average fighter in the flyweight division. So all that being said, if you want to hedge If you have Maksum and parlays, you can hedge out with Tyson Nam by KO. Other than that, I don't think Tyson Nam wins this fight. Maksum is a pretty decent parlay piece, but at minus 400, making his debut, not always the wisest decision to make. So yeah, I think Maksum wins this fight handedly and inside the distance. And before we get into this next fight, shout out to the chat. Shout out to my guy Mark, who's always showing support. I appreciate you, Mark. And Rob, I appreciate you too, always showing the love and support. Thank you guys for hopping on this early start, at least early for the Pacific time zone. And yes, Rob, definitely passing. Definitely passing. This whole card in general has a lot of fights that are more stayaways. It's like, oh, I like the favorite, but not at this price. Or I like the underdog, but not as much as I think the favorite's going to win. It's a lot of questionable fights, and typically these weeks are the ones where it's best to lay low, pick your spots very, very closely, and choose wisely. Next up, we have Jonaro Valdez going up against Evan Elder. Let's see. So Evan Elder is going to be the taller fighter by an inch, and he's going to be at a 1-inch reach disadvantage here, and he's also going to be the younger fighter by 5 years. Valdez fights are just entertaining fights. Let's just put it like that. He goes into that cage and goes to war every single time. And Evan Elder is also another fighter who loves his fair share of wars too. I think Elder has more ways to win this fight, quite frankly. With the takedowns, the wrestling, he has pretty serviceable striking. I mean, against Nazim Sadikov, who I pretty much like his striking. I'm not going to say it's the best in the world, but Nazim has some pretty slick striking, especially when it comes to the power. But Elder was able to weather the storm there. Unfortunately, had that TKO loss because of the cut, but he won round 1 and round 2. And more than anything, I like the under on this fight. Valdez has fought under to the total every single time except for his last fight where he went to decision, and he got dropped multiple times by Natan Levy. So I think Elder wins here inside the distance, but I would not be surprised if Valdez can find a KO of his own, because he does throw with vicious intent and he has serious power in his hands. So you really can't look past the power of Valdez here. And especially at a price tag like minus 310, 320 on Elder, you're going to be sweating it for every single minute that Valdez is standing up on his feet. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, I do think this fight ends inside the distance one way or another. And yes, Rob, I do agree. Fight does not go to decision. That's my read here. But moving on, we have Austin Lingo going up against Melquizael Costa. Austin Lingo is going to be the older fighter by 3 years. He's going to be not shorter, the same height, and he's given up 3 inches in reach. In this fight specifically, it's close in a sense that there's a lot of unknowns with Costa, especially with this takedown defense. We saw in his last fight, got taken down fairly easily, but when it was on the feet, he was doing serious damage. And I think Lingo is a guy that starts fast, but starts to fade as the fight goes on. I think that's a fair assumption, given that that Landwehr fight won the first round pretty handily, but slowed down completely in the second and got subbed. I like the skill set when striking for Costa. He just has a lot of weapons, as I mentioned. And other than that, he's prone to getting taken down. I would have been all over Costa here. If his takedown defense was just a little bit better, I would have found myself at the window. But just due to that unknown, I'm going to have to stay away personally. Lingo is tough. I expect this to be another war on the card. But Costa by knockout late round props is probably what I'm thinking I'm going to do. I just see him probably knocking Lingo out in the second or third round. Towards the end of the second is what I'm going to go down with on the book. So Costa by late second round knockout. Let's see here. Tough card from a betting perspective. Yeah, 100%. This card is very sketchy. Very sketchy from a betting standpoint. So I would stay away personally. So good read there, Mark. And great job on your past couple of weeks. I know we've been talking a little bit. So great job with your betting and just sticking to your game plan overall, because we talked about that a while ago. And Man, there's a lot that you can tweak when it comes to like your betting style that will change your results in the long term if you just follow like simple rules. That's what I advise everyone to do. Is just find that rule set, find that little tweak to your game that will make you 10 times better. Overall, you'll be more profitable. But enough of that. Next up, we have Estela Nunes going up against Victoria Dudukova. Victoria Dudukova is going to be the taller girl by 1 inch here. She's also going to have a 1 inch reach advantage, being the younger fighter by 6 years. Now, Victoria Dudukova is a pretty decently sized favorite, around minus 250 to 290, depending on where you have her. Her striking is, yeah, I'm not going to speak about her striking. It's not that good. She leaves a lot of holes defensively, and she can definitely get hit. And when you look on the other side of the cage, you have Estela Nunes, who, yeah, she hasn't performed the best in the UFC, but her striking is legit. She has power, and she dropped one of the better strikers in the division of Yasmin Jauregui, who I know she got knocked out in that first round by Denise Gomez. I get it, but that was a flash knockout. So you can't put too much stock into it because usually that kind of stuff it's rare. But Estela Nunes has power, and the issue with her is she gasses out as the fight goes on, and she gives up a lot of takedowns. And what is Dudukova's game? It's the takedowns. I think she's going to be able to find those takedowns, lay down some ground and pound, and find herself in a good position to possibly even finish this fight. So I'm going to predict Dudukova to win. I think this fight is better in terms of a live betting standpoint, just because I think Estela Nunes wins the first round at a pretty decent clip here if Dudukova is not able to land these takedowns. And I don't want to pay this minus 260, 270 price tag on Dudukova pre-fight. I cannot. So I would much rather wait until the second round. If Nunes shows any sign of gassing out after winning the first round, I will be in on Dudukova. So that is an official one for me. Let's see. My brother Liam. Shout out to Liam. If you guys haven't followed Liam, one of the sharpest in the game, and delivers consistent and very smart analysis on these fights. One of the best tape readers throughout my experience in this industry. So give Liam a follow, show him some support. Liam Picks Fights on Twitter and YouTube. Great guy too. Always friendly and willing to help out. Next up, we have Tucker Lutz going up against Melsik Bagdasaryan. Tucker Lutz is going to be the younger fighter by 2 years. He's going to be the shorter fighter by 1 inch, and he's going to be at a 2 inch reach advantage. So when you look at this fight, we all know that Tucker Lutz's game is more of a takedown heavy game, has some decent striking as well, good boxing background. And then when you look at Melsik, crazy power in the kickboxing. This guy is really fast. He was known to knock people out very quickly in the regional scene. And we saw in his last time out against Josh Kulabau, who I had a bet on. He was styling on Kulabau in that first round before Kulabau took him down and found a submission. But before then, he almost had Kulabau out on multiple occasions. Bagdasaryan is a serious striker. The question is, will he be able to negate the wrestling? And if he does, I think he wins this fight pretty confidently. Lutz definitely can win minutes with the wrestling, but I just have seen him fade slightly as the fight goes on. So I like Melsik here, and at the current price. But earlier on in the week, the people that got Lutz at the plus 220, 210 range, good on you. You got the good line. I think Melsik at minus 210 was a little bit too expensive for my liking. I think at minus 150, 160, it's a little bit better. So I'm waiting to see where this line goes. Next up, we have Terrence McKinney going up against Nazim Sadikov. And guys, I'm going to keep this one short and simple. Let me read the tape first. Nazim Sadikov is going to be a year older. Both fighters are the same height, and McKinney is going to have a 4.5 inch reach advantage here. So like I said, I'm going to keep this one short and simple because I think it's a very binary fight. I feel like whoever lands first with one of their power shots likely wins this fight. I think McKinney is a little bit more, I'm not going to say washed because that's just disrespectful, but McKinney has not looked anywhere near his ordinary self, especially in that last fight against Bonfim. He just looked slow. He looked timid. He wasn't really throwing too much output. And the way he got knocked out with that flying knee in the second round, tough to see. And then Sadikov against Elder dropped those first 2 rounds, but then came back, was really aggressive, and got that doctor stoppage. Without that, if the fight went to decision, he would have lost. Both these guys carry heavy power, and I think the best way to target this fight would be the under. Now, it is pretty juiced now, so I wouldn't take it at the current price. But under 1.5 is likely where I would be going with this fight personally if I got the earlier number. But this should be a fun one. It should be a fight that ends quick too, in my opinion. And we have another one of those coming up soon. But next up, we have Norma Dumont going up against Chelsea Chandler. Norma Dumont and Chelsea Chandler are the same age. They're both 32 years old. Chelsea Chandler is going to be the taller fighter by 1 inch, and then she's also going to have a 1-inch reach advantage here. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I refuse to tape this fight. This is probably the last fight in the featherweight division. Just based off of their last 2 performances, I think Dumont's going to be able to put Chandler up against the cage and grind her way out to a decision. But it's a very sloppy fight, and I just don't want to be involved. These fights specifically, I tend to stay away. So I apologize, but nothing from me on this one. I think Dumont wins, though. Next up, we have Albert Duraev going up against Jung-Young Park. Let's see here. Albert Duraev is going to be at a 1-inch height advantage. He's also going to have 2 inches in reach. He'll also be the older fighter by 2 years. Very fun fight. I like Jung-Young Park's volume here and the durability, where personally I question the durability and the cardio of Albert Duraev. Park tends to break people down the stretch with the cardio, and I don't know if Albert Duraev is going to be able to outlast that. I know Duraev looked pretty decent in that last outing against Chidi and Njokuani, but Chidi did not fight like Chidi fights. He was very timid and didn't really throw much. He just looked like he was out of it. But I do think here Park, the more experienced guy, is going to be able to negate the wrestling of Duraev, maybe even land a takedown or 2 of his own, similar to some of the fights that Duraev has had on the regional scene. And I think Park is just going to be able to lay it on him, maybe even get a late round finish. So give me Park in this matchup. Next up, we have Ottoman Zaitar going up against Francisco Prado. Ottoman Zaitar is going to be the older fighter by 12 years. Huge. 3 inches reach disadvantage. And he's also going to be, he's going to be at a 5-inch reach disadvantage and a 3-inch height disadvantage. So obviously Prado, the bigger guy in this matchup, much younger at 21 years old, going up against the guy who throws all hell on wheels. He has no off button when it comes to the power. Both of these guys tend to favor violence as well. I think Prado here has some wrestling upside if he chooses to use it. And I think if he uses it early, he can zap the cardio off of Zaitar and finish him late. But I do think this fight ends very quick. Zaitar is a really wild striker and can shut anyone's lights off. But we saw what our boy Steamroller did to him. Shut his lights out in that first round. I think this fight ends one way or another. But I do expect Prado to use the wrestling early on in the first round and maybe even win by submission here. So give me Prado early. Co-main event, we have Jack Della Madalena going up against Basil Hafiz. Basil Hafiz is making a late replacement debut. Both guys are 5'11", and Jack Della Madalena is going to be at a 1-inch reach advantage here, being the younger fighter by 5 years. Now, it's tough to say here just because Basil Hafiz is a decent fighter. I'm not going to say he's good, but he's decent. He has some pretty solid wrestling and has power in his own right, but he does favor the wrestling. Jack Della Madalena, though, we know what he presents. Elite boxing in the UFC terms. It's just the question of, can he keep this fight standing? And I have seen some people take the dog shot on Basil Hafiz, and I don't mind it, I guess, just because he does have that wrestling acumen. I do expect Jack Della Madalena, though, to get the finish here, probably in the second round by knockout. not much other than that to say. Just Basil Hafiz, it's a little bit harder to find tape on him. But yeah, I do think Madalina by KO, depending on the line, solid look. KO2. That would be crazy. If KO2 hits, I'm gonna come back to this video. I'll be clipping it. Last but not least, we have Holly Holm going up against Mayra Bueno Silva. Holly Holm is going to be the older fighter by 10 years. She's going to be at a 2-inch height advantage and a 3-inch or 2.5-inch reach advantage here as well. I think this is a close fight. Silva is a much younger fighter, and I see this fight playing out one of two ways, really. If Bueno Silva is able to land takedowns, I think she can find some control time, has some decent ground and pound, and is always dangerous hunting submissions, especially that armbar. Or Holly Holm keeps this fight on the feet and just wins with like her striking acumen and outpoints Bueno Silva to a decision win. I do personally think that Silva is going to be able to take down Holly Holm and find that submission. Holly Holm recently has been more of a clinch fighter. She's been taking girls all the way to the fence and just weighing on them, trying to keep them against the fence and land that dirty boxing. Whereas earlier in her career, she was looking to box. So I think Silva's going to find the takedowns. I think she's going to find herself in favorable positions against the cage. Look for those reversals and take Holly Holm down. And eventually, I think she finds that armbar finish. Now, the last time I checked, the Silva finish only prop was -190. And it is an expensive price to pay, but Holly Holm is not finishing anyone, really. And all the finish equity, in my opinion, is on the Silva side. So I might find my way to that. I don't know. Maybe I'll parlay it with something, but we'll see. I just think that Silva has all of the finish equity in this fight. And if it goes to decision where Holly Holm wins, I still get my money back. So I'll take a push. Who knows? We will see. But guys, that is the end of this episode. I wanted to thank you all so much for tuning in and supporting the show, supporting me. But we'll be back next week with another edition for UFC London.